Hey, welcome to Saved and Besieged by Flippin' Tables. This is a place where faith meets the fight, and your permission to be brutally honest about your pain without letting go of Jesus. This is a space for the burned, the bruised, and the barely hanging on. No sugarcoating, no shallow faith, just raw hope, real theology, and a God who refuses to walk out when life gets ugly. Saved and Besieged by Flippin' Tables, for the wrecked, the raw, and the rising. Hey, this is Cece.
And I'm JR.
Together we're JRCC. Our mission is simple, to bring you one podcast at a time about faith.
Not the polished, sugar-coated version, but real faith.
The kind that wrestles doubts, cries out, and still finds Jesus in the mess.
That's what Saved and Besieged is all about.
You've probably rolled your eyes before you've even listened to this. Fair enough. You've heard the confident voices, the tidy answers, the we've got it all sorted vibe. Christians telling you how it should be, what you're doing wrong, why you're not enough. Some of us met Jesus and started acting like we got a badge. If you've been on the end of that, of course you're over it. Truth is, a lot of us inside the church are over it too. And that's why I'm speaking. I'm tired of the loop. Christians arguing about who's right, who's wrong, while real people are hurting. And yeah, I'm calling it BS. No, not the swear word. BS, as in before spirit stuff. Noise we make before love gets a say. Jesus didn't ask us to win debates. He asked us to love God and love people. But somewhere along the way, we as Christians have swapped relationship for performance and presence for posing. And it's time we step out of that. Maybe your story sits in your throat like a stone. You tried church, you were brave enough to say, I'm not okay, and someone handed you a memory verse or a Bible verse like a plaster for a broken leg. You admitted you're lonely and got a lecture. You said the panic attack hits at 3 a.m. And someone who sleeps fine just told you, just trust God. And maybe you've only met Christians online. Caps lock prophets, long threads, more heat than help, keyboard preachers. Some of us have been the problem. We've posted about kindness and then snapped at our kids in the car park. We've talked about justice and ignored the neighbor who needed a warm jumper and a cuppa. It's frighteningly easy to be stage ready and heart shy, polished opinions, no real presence. And when we're scared of being seen for who we really are, religion turns into a performance. That before spirit stuff looks quite slick. Incredible quick slogans, big certainty, no silence at all. You can fill the church and still miss the person in the back row, hanging on by a thread. You can swing Bible verses like a club, and we can make God sound like a manager disappointed with our quarterly numbers. But when the Spirit gets a word in, the air changes. We stop checking who's right or who's wrong and start noticing who's hurting. There's less sort yourself out rubbish and more pull up a chair. We're here for you. Truth is still truth. But it needs to arrive with a towel ready to wash feet that have walked long, hard roads. But if you're cautious, you're not crazy. It's normal to be careful when love at church has sometimes been used to control. If you're bruised, you're not weak. Being hurt by people who speak for God makes the ground feel shaky. So of course you're going to watch your step. And if you're a Christian who's exhausted from pretending, you can put the props down. God doesn't need your performance. He wants you. The fix isn't better branding. It's getting close. Sit with the guy who can't make it through the night and help him understand what he's going through. Walk with the single mum choosing between power and dinner. Listen to the woman who prayed and didn't get a miracle and still turned up. And somehow your view of faith will grow a spine and a softer voice. Now, I'm not saying drop your convictions. I'm saying live them. Let love take time and tears. Stay when there's nothing clever left to say. Remember, Jesus gave us 2 clear commands. Love God, love your neighbor. Not for theory, for real life. So no sales pitch, no program to join, no brand to impress you with. Think of this as a sanity check. A hand on your shoulder, a nudge away from the noise, and towards the person, the God at the center of it all. If faith is anything, it's a long walk with a God who doesn't flinch at your real life. Now we all know the look, the fixed smile that never reaches the eyes, the tone that sounds like a sigh with a Bible verse on it. You've sat across it at a cafe while your coffee went cold and your story went nowhere. You opened your mouth and said, I'm not okay. And somewhere between the second and third verse and a bit of advice, Your insides started to fold up like a paper boat. You nodded and promised to pray about it and walked out smaller than when you walked in. It isn't always the wagging fingers and the sharp warnings. It's the quiet thing that seeps in, where you end up feeling like you're a problem that needs to be fixed, that you're a project that needs to be managed. Somehow a neighbor becomes a case, a friend becomes a burden on my heart, and a real human gets replaced by some weird theory. Now, I've been on both sides. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've been the one with the tidy answers, thinking certainty would save someone who didn't need a lecture, maybe just a lift home and a hot meal. And I've been the one trying to turn grief into sentences, while a well-meaning person with a verse missed the point completely. Real life is messier than what we speak about. The marriage that won't turn with just one more tip. The panic that still shows up at 3:07 a.m. and makes your chest feel like a locked door. That bottle that knows your name. The ache for human touch that you don't know how to talk about without being filed under complicated. Into all of that come the clean lines and the bright smiles. True in a way, yet somehow not the truth that we need. I remember a boy after service, torn jeans, eyes red in a way that wasn't fashionable. He hovered by the exit and with a look that says, I want to be seen and I want to leave at the same time. I remember asking how he was. He shrugged that heavy shrug, saying, they keep telling me God's got a plan, he said. I just want to know if I'll make it through tonight. And that's when you feel the holy weight of saying less and just staying longer. No definition heals, just turning up, a walk to the corner shop, a bag of chips, a quiet bench, and just listening. The problem is we've turned faith into a performance show. We somehow pass or fail people with grades that we've made up. And then we wonder why no one wants to sit our exam. We argue about purity while someone's hands are shaking. We swap testimonies like badges while a single mom counts coins and chooses which bills won't get paid. We fix doctrine while a teenager is deciding whether he or she needs to keep living. And we still ask why more people aren't Christians. And I remember one preacher said, people aren't Christian because they've either met one or they haven't. And here's the kicker. It's easier to be right than to be close. Easier to craft posts than to carry people. Easier to defend the so-called brand than to bend down and tie the shoe of someone who keeps tripping. Being close to pain means getting pulled into the real smell of grief, the long text at midnight, the silence where any verse would sound like a plaster on a wound that needs stitches. But if you're a Christian listening to this, breathe. This is not a takedown. This is a turn. If you're cautious and curious, you're allowed to be. Suspicion is sane when love has sometimes been used as leverage. But hear this from someone like me who's struggling to unlearn the pose and the false pretexts of Christianity. The Jesus we talk about isn't into theater. He didn't pile people into spiritual tasks that they were too tired to carry. He didn't use the truth to hit people. He wore it and moved towards the hurting until his very presence did the convincing. And maybe that's why the eye roll hits so hard. We know the difference between God with us and a lecture at us. We can tell when someone's come to shoulder the weight and when they've come to hold the microphone. You and I don't need any new hoops to jump through. We need a hand that doesn't flinch. We need a faith that turns up, sometimes shuts up and just stays. Now, if that sounds soft, remember softness keeps a heart from going hard. Hard truth is still hard. But in Jesus, it tastes like water to the thirsty. He could be sharp, but he was never showy. He was clear, but he was never cruel. When the crowd wanted a show, he didn't care. He wanted the person. When the room demanded a ruling, he knelt down in dust and wrote so no one could read, but everyone could feel. So yes, roll your eyes at the theater. I do as well. But then if you can, keep them open a moment longer. Look for the person, the bruised person that hasn't snapped, that tiny wick that's still carrying a stubborn light. It might be you, it might be me. It's almost always both. If you want to see what this looks like in a real room with real people, there's a scene I can't shake. A boy on the ground, a crowd in debate, and Jesus walking through the noise. Let's go there next. This is Cece, one half of JRCC. If you're bruised, burnt, or barely hanging on, you're in the right place. Faith isn't polished here. It's bloody, messy, and still worth holding on to. Welcome back. Now we're going to look at Mark chapter 9. There's a boy on the ground. Now, not a picture, a real child. Body jerking, jaws tight, eyes rolled back. His dad is worn out and scared. Around them are a circle of really important people, leaders, followers, opinions, lots of noise, but no real help. Now Jesus' disciples are mid-argument with the experts. No one even remembers who started it. Voices rise, pages flip, fingers are pointed. But the boy shakes again, and someone steps back so their shoes don't get dirty from the vomit. Now this is just me visualizing what would have happened. And Jesus walks into the noise and asks the only question that matters. What are you arguing about? He doesn't even wait for a response. He says, bring the boy to me. That's it. No debate. Bring him. We're not told what they were arguing about. But if you look at us today and what we argue about, then we can take a pretty good guess. Maybe they were arguing labels. Is it spiritual? Is it mental health? Is it trauma? Did the parents cause it? What exact prayer should we use? Did they raise their hands enough? Did they sing louder? Maybe they were arguing wording. Do we call it healing or should we call it deliverance? Maybe a care plan. Maybe someone wants a formula. Someone else tells them to fast. One probably wants the dad to confess something first. Everybody's got a theory, but no one's got the boy. Tell me you haven't seen that on a Sunday. A woman asks for help with her marriage and gets a list of podcasts that fits someone else's listening schedule. A man says he's depressed and he gets a panel. Sin, serotonin, Sabbath. You pick one. A teenager whispers, does God see me and does God love me the way I am? And we throw them into an online fight about identity. These people slip out the side door, even quieter than before, because we hold forums on how to reach culture, while the boy in row 5 is choosing how to numb himself tonight. We split churches over smoke machines, but split homes with our silence. Shame on us. We count decisions for Christ on a screen and forget to invite the hurting for dinner. Shame on us. Some of the things we fight over are almost funny if they weren't so costly and didn't end up having people to pay such a high price. Do we need to sing hymns or modern songs? Drums or no drums? Suits or trainers? Which Bible version? How long should the sermons be? Weekly communion or monthly? Should women preach? Can pastors have a drink? Whether you're a real church, if you don't do it my way. Meanwhile, like I just said, there is a mum choosing which bill to pay or which she can't afford to. And the boy is still on the floor. And then the serious fights begin. Do spiritual gifts matter for today or not? Who's right about how salvation really works? Who decides what? We end up turning fight into a tightrope and expect the bruised and battered to balance on it. We polish statements and forget to look in the mirror. We can be very sure that someone nearby is very alone. Jesus looks at the circle and you can hear the grief in his voice. How long am I going to put up with this? No, not because the truth doesn't matter, but because the truth is standing there right in front of us, and we still prefer to perform. Jesus doesn't ask them for their theory. He asks them for the child. Bring him. Bring the boy who's drooling, who's got foam on his chin, scabs on his knees, eyes scared. Bring him. Bring the dad with shaking hands and a long history of disappointment. Bring him. Bring the mess you can't fit into an agenda. Bring the risk that you won't get credit if this turns out to be messy. Bring the chance that faith today will look like staying, not just solving. I remember at one of the churches that they spent an hour arguing if they should sing a song because one line might be off. Someone read a blog post, someone quoted a book, someone suggested a community, and someone else suggested a committee. And in the corridor, the receptionist was splitting lunch to make sandwiches for a couple who hadn't eaten since yesterday. The team wrote minutes about the song, but no one wrote down the sandwiches. The boy was still shaking. Another church flashed a huge number of salvations on a slide like a scoreboard. And when you really think about it, could they remember 3 names? No one could remember. We all knew the number, but we didn't know the people. We texted each other, we had a group chat, we loved the metric, and we missed the meal that should have followed. We missed the reality of what that number means. The boy on the floor learned that we're great. Sorry. The boy on the floor learned counting, just not great at carrying. One of my friends told me the deacons had debated the right view of anxiety while he drove circles around the block so his panic wouldn't peak when he walked in. And when he finally came through the doors, he didn't need categories. He needed arms. He needed someone to sit with him until the room stopped spinning. He needed to hear. Let's sit. Let's not try and fix everything. Watch Jesus. He doesn't roll his eyes at learning how to throw out. He doesn't roll his eyes at learning or throw out doctrine. He just doesn't let it replace compassion. He doesn't test the dad's faith. He draws it out. If you can do anything, the dad says, tired words from a tired man. Everything is possible, Jesus answered. Not to shame him, but to help him breathe again. And the dad prays the most honest prayer I've ever heard. I believe, but help my unbelief. Now Jesus takes that tiny thread and pulls a miracle through it. Notice what he doesn't do. He doesn't turn that boy into a case study. He doesn't blame the parents. He doesn't write a policy. He doesn't wait for a vote. He doesn't use the moment to humiliate anyone. He speaks to the chaos, and then he lifts the boy. He takes his wrist, and strength and love goes where arguments could not. If love is the measure, everything moves. Everything changes. The band will play a little softer, so the back row person praying can be heard. The teaching will begin to feel warmer without getting weaker. The sermon will leave space for silence. We still care about truth, but let that not leave us to step over. We still care about truth, but don't let that leave us walking over a body just so that we can prove a point that we're right. Let's not ask a shaking person to wait while we try to prove we're right. Hear Jesus' line again. Bring him to me, bring her, bring them, bring the panic, bring the relapse, bring the diagnosis, bring the debt, bring the nights you don't want to live and the mornings you don't know how to. Bring what you cannot fix. Our job isn't to decide if the person qualifies or not. Our job is to carry them. Now, if love is the measure, religion stops showing off and starts pulling up chairs. So if Jesus' answer to our noise is simply bring the person, what does that look like when there's no stage? Just kitchens, bus stops, and Tuesday afternoons. It looks less like a show and more like a real relationship you can feel. Let's head there next. Welcome back to Saved and Besieged. This is Cece. Christianity was never meant to be a show. No judges, no buzzer, no spotlight waiting for you to impress anyone. It is a relationship with a God who stays. Stays when your voice shakes, stays when your temper snaps, stays when your faith feels thin, and your prayer is just one word that barely leaves your mouth. Real relationships are awkward and honest. Think of the first talk you have after an argument. You're a bit clumsy, not sure where to put your hands, but you still talk because that person matters. That's what prayer is supposed to be. You talk, you listen, you learn to trust. Faith isn't announcing that a chair is strong. Faith is actually sitting down on it. You do that every day without giving a speech. Try the same with God. Say what's really in you, not what sounds spiritual. You don't need to raise your hands and begin with Dear Heavenly Father and Hallelujah. It can just be, I'm scared, I'm tired, I need rent by Friday. And do you know what the strongest and the most powerful prayer is? Help me, God. Stop me before I do something stupid. If all you've got is a complaint, bring it. If all you've got is silence, bring it. Keep showing up. But you might ask, how do I know God when I can't see him? The same way you get to know anyone. Small, steady steps in ordinary life. Give him the commute when the bus doesn't show up and your drawer is tight. Give him the dishes when the sink is piled high and you're the only one washing them. Give him the 2 a.m. panic attack when your chest feels locked. Just say, here I am. And notice this, he doesn't run away. The room feels a little less sharp and your breathing eases a little bit. Over time, that noticing turns to knowing. And this relationship can happen in just plain places. A builder with dust in his beard whispers a few lines to God before he starts his work. A nurse can just go, God, this is really hard because the ward is full and she needs one sentence to hold on to. A mum can pull up outside school and just says, God, I don't have this, and walks in to meet the principal anyway. None of this would make an Instagram highlight reel, but all of that is real. Here's the difference. Performance loves moments, but relationship loves minutes. Performance keeps score. How many quiet times, how many notes, how many likes, how many hours of Bible reading, how many chapters. Relationship keeps company. God beside you in the chemist queue. God beside you when your test results land. God beside you when you apologize to your child for snapping. And then try again. Performance claps when you nail it. Relationship pulls you close, even when you don't. I remember listening to someone who said they stopped praying because they didn't feel holy enough. So he just started making toast and he said, God, this is burnt and so am I. Now there were no angels, just the pop of the toaster and a strange sense that he hadn't been mocked. He kept going. Toast prayers change lives. He still swears sometimes, but he also prays. Now that relationship lasts when performance wouldn't. Someone else relapsed after 11 months of sobriety. Performance would have pushed him off the stage and said, come back when you've got it together. Love just sat with him through the shakes and said, we're not done. He didn't earn that by succeeding. He received it because the God who stays taught us how to stay too. If the unseen bit is hard, anchor it in something you can see. Read a short scene from the Bible and watch Jesus in a real storm. He doesn't audition people. He doesn't check if they've memorized the right scriptures. He asks simple, honest questions and stands close enough to handle the answers. What do you want me to do for you? That's not a trick. It's an open door. Try answering that in your kitchen. Say that out loud. Keep it simple. 3 breath prayers on repeat. Inhale, Lord Jesus Christ. Exhale, where are you? Inhale, I'm here, Lord. Exhale, I know you're here too. Keep a chair by the window. Sit there for 5 minutes and call it prayer, even if your mind bounces everywhere. Before bed, say one honest line. Today I felt small at work. Today I laughed and I forgot I could. Today I lied. God saw the whole day. He's not waiting for a cleaned up version. Relationships include the days when you feel nothing. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. You might not feel God in those hours. Keep the time anyway. Faith is often just keeping the chair warm for a friend who comes. Hi, this is Saved and Besieged, and you're listening to CC, one half of JRCC. If you're bruised, burned out, or barely hanging on, you're in the right place. Faith isn't polished here. It's bloody, messy, and still worth holding on to. We've been listening to Not This BS Religious Stuff Again. And by BS, I mean before spirit stuff. No, not the swear word. So keep listening, because we're breaking down all the stuff that happens under the guise of perfect performance. Remember that Christianity was never meant to be a religion. It's a relationship. Now, church can help or hurt this. If the room feels like a stage, you learn your lines and never tell the truth. Look for the unperformed corners, the kettle where the older man listens more than he talks, the small group that brings meals without posting about it, the person who remembers your child's name and your interview date and texts you at 4 or 5 with a thumbs up that makes you smile at your phone like a kid. That's church, where God is allowed to be louder than the show. Doing things well is fine. Play in tune, speak clearly, but doing things well isn't Jesus. People come first. Worship that can't make space for someone to cry isn't excellent. It's cold. Teaching that never stops for questions is neat, not helpful. If your plan and your theology can't cope with a person shaking in the back, now that plan and that strategy needs help. A real relationship with God will change how you talk about Him. You'll make space for both stories at the same table. You will say, I asked and Jesus answered. And you will also say, I asked and He didn't. That's grown-up faith. You'll find out that God doesn't break when you're angry. He won't leave when you're not ready to forgive. He can carry those sentences. He's a big boy, and He'll still stay with you. If the only prayer you can manage tonight is, I'm here, that's enough. If the only holy thing you do is put your phone face down for 10 minutes and listen to a kinder voice than your inner critic, that's enough. If the bravest thing you can do is to ask a friend to sit with you while you make the call you're dreading, that counts. Love is a long, steady walk in the same direction. It also looks like turning up in track pants saying, I'm not okay, and fine.